Hey, muy buenas tardes, everyone. I hope everybody's doing well, blessed, and enjoying family. Y como siempre, allow me to start off by thanking everybody for you guys' wishes, prayers, and your time you take out your day to express them to me. Gracias de corazón. Okay, to continue a little bit on my story, as I had promised you guys I was gonna do. After the little weather incident, we went to the hole. There was numerous of us that went. Now, once getting into the hole, it was, to say the least, something different. For example, I had already been in a couple holes, including East Block, in Death Row, Overflow. But, I never was in a hole where there was two pillies and they were basically doing their own thing on their side of the hole, if I make sense of it. For example, at one side it was Sapo from San Pedro, and on the other side it was also and Terco. But at all times, Sapo was there beforehand. So, as you guys know, the way Pilis work is the first the first one there has the overall say. But anyways, I got back there to the hole, and I got next to Sapo in the beginning, and everything was cool. The one thing that we tend to do as camaradas or sureños is always be the front man. Like, for example, on the yard, I was always in the shadows, but here it was the opposite. Right away, Sapo gave me the keys to the concrete yard, and on my side of the hole, which was the gallo and checking paperwork, and you guys know the whole go around. Now, in the midst that we were doing this, Abato came from B yard, which was Evil from Watts. Now, Evil from Watts, he had a sex crime on him. So, again, as I mentioned before, there was vatos on the yard that were more concentrated on what went up their veins than doing what they were supposed to, which was check paperwork and maintain the yard clean. As all tecatos usually do. It's them first and the rest later, right? If they could get away with it, they're gonna end up doing it. But I disculpen if I got off track. Going back to Evil, you know, once they have an R, there's no going back. At least it's how it's supposed to be. It don't necessarily always works like that because some of them have feria and they keep the pilis in their pocket, so they allow them to walk amongst us. And basically, everything you come to believe me, you're gonna be shocked, to know there's a vato was a sex crime and you just have to put up with it. But anyways, people started getting on me through Papiro, and he started telling me like, "Hey, camarada, I want to be able to clean my stuff, you know. Uh, Tell me what I can do to be able to be embraced again." And as you guys know, there's no coming back from that. But at this time, there was another sex offender on C Yard. So instead of wasting a good camarada to go out there and take care of the other vato, what I intended to do was use him if he went to C Yard to take care of another trash, right? Which is I won't hurt someone that has a date or something or a good camarada, and I just use a basura to bring back another basura, right? But anyways, that's just the way of thinking when you're there. Well, at least when you try to take care of the camaradas. So I ran this across Sapo, and he told me, if I could get it done to go ahead. Okay, so at this time there was a few older vatos I got in there. They were supposed to be on that inactive 5 years thing from Pelican Bay or the shoes, and they were getting kicked back out to their yards. Now, mind you, this is the end of 2001, so there was one camarada that from the PDs and from other camaradas that were there that had a lot of Jews, and that he was supposed to know what time it was. And at this time, as I stated before, I was wet behind the ears, so I didn't really understand this vato's actions till it happened. They were running committee, so they were pulling out individuals. When they pulled out Evil, he was going to request for Sea Yard, and everything was set. So when he went out there, he came back, and right away he got at me on paper, and he told me that yeah, he was going to be heading out there. So I shot him the vato's name, everything, who he was, building he was in. We had all the 411. We were just waiting for a camarada to hit Sea Yard, to come back with that other vato. So I told him, to be sincere with everybody, I told him, you gotta make sure you take that fool's wing, though, because it was a child that fool was there for. So, no mercy on him. And I disculpe and I say it like this. It was just a state of mind I was in at that time. But when IGI was in the block, so when the SEALs actually came in to take Evil out, the vato cartoon from 18, the one I tell you that it's supposed to have a lot of clecha, he starts yelling out the door. F Evil, you're basura, I got paperwork on you, you're gonna get what you got coming, etc. etc. Being that Zelda soldier. So what happened was right away IGI grabbed Evil and they slammed him down again. They start looking into his paperwork, and it checked out basically what Cartoon was yelling on the tier. Now when this happened at this time, I was already on me and my celly Huesos from Long Beach. We were already on walk alone because me and another good camarada, little bullet from Delhi, we had already pulled the mission on a Colombiano, which I will touch on later on. And but we were supposed to go to committee the following week and go back out to the concrete yard. So when all this happened, of course you guys know, the Pili Sapo got at me and he told me like, hey, this Vato should have had more clecha, more head on his shoulders. Go ahead and go out there and take care of business. At this time there was a CEO back there that was on our side. He played that card, and of course, us being the snakes that we have to be in that aspect, we were stringing him along. So he knew, I was gonna go out there and have something. And for those that know, this is Blythe, California, and you go out there and it's hot. It's out in the desert, and in the hole you don't get no shoes. You go out there in flip flops. So what you do is you double your socks to work out in your socks or be out there on your socks. So to be sincere, I didn't know the vato. I just knew him by Placaso, and it was on the Oso side of the bedroom. So when we went out there, we were the last ones out, so we started shaking everybody's eyesight, and it just happened that the last vato was him, right? So when I introduced myself and he told me, Cartoon from 18, I held down to his arm while Little Bullet cracked him. When he cracked him, I pulled out and we started going to town. And Homeboy not just only yelled at the door, like a straight snake. Because later on, everything came out the way that Vato was. But he did cartwheels and he rolled all the way to the corner where the Huda walks in between the 2 yards in the hole, and he grabbed onto the fence. As he grabbed on, at this time, I was one of those individuals that when something happened, I black out. I just concentrate on what needs to be done, and I lose sight of everything else. It's part of the anger management that most of us have, coming from the surroundings. So I remember after I hit him with the piece a couple times, I threw it to the side, and a camarada put it in socks. So I just remember, where I seen blood, I would crack him and he would cover up, and I would kick him in the face. And I didn't even feel the pepper spray. The Huda unloaded 2 of those canisters of pepper spray, the ones like fire extinguishers, right on us because he's holding on to the fence. And they leave it out in the sun in the desert just so that it's hot enough so when they hit you, it opens up your pores and it goes inside to really do some damage, right? And I had not noticed that the tower had already shot the speedhead grenades, the ones they hit and throw a gang of little spikes on the floor. And, the reason I'm telling this story, because wherever the little homie Bullet's at, I said it at the moment and I'll say it again, I'm in debt with him. He took a risk because, like I said, I lost sight, and the tower had already pulled out the mini because homeboy was bleeding, and little Bullet was on the floor already. He got up and he grabbed me and he told me, hey, ya estuvo al suelo. He pulled out already. So I did, I went to the floor and right away I felt everything. Literally, when you have that adrenaline in you, you don't feel nothing. And everything hit at once, And needless to say, I don't want to get into war stories, but we went back and homeboy, he did what he did or what he felt it was right for him to do. And at first, I tend to be like, okay, we should have just stomped the man, right? But he interfered with something that was supposed to get done, Now Camarada has to pick up time to bring that other fool back. So, but then I came to find out that when that fool was running yards, he was a butthole, when it came to Camaradas. He tried to cross him up just over anything. So to answer subscribers' question, yeah, there's Camaradas that use and abuse that power too. At least at the time that all the señores and they were sitting back there in the shoe, it was Camaradas being the feet, the legs, and eyes for them on the yards. And it was still the llavero system. So he washed up a lot, But mainly he washed up a lot of his own homeboys. Cause he took advantage, He was supposed to be per se a campolero, and the rest were just them titles they like to use, Southsider, Sureño, but underneath them, which in reality to me it's all nonsense, right? Because the minute you get busted for something, just because you don't do it to the liking of an individual, don't make you less of a man than the next, right? But again, there is a lot of camaradas that go inside and they don't know the rules and regulations to what you're entitled with, which at this point, on everything I have heard, it really makes no difference. They're in a pedestal now that if it was bad when they were in the shoe, I bet camaradas have it bad now. But anyways, I heard that when he was up in the bay, the reason he got kicked out on inactive was because he was just sitting around, man. He didn't want to partake in everything. But he got out the shoe, and all of a sudden, all that little high power came back to him. And that's a big old thing has started. At this time, Boxer was still, he was wiggling. And I had a big target on myself because of Guerito. So I crossed it or put it on Sapo's table, and he told me don't even trip. Hacenoso and Terco, and they go, don't worry, everything everything will be dealt with, as in Raul. But at this time, I didn't know the wars Terco had going, with Up in High Desert, with Artie. He had a lot of open wars, but, if if I wouldn't have went that route, I could have saved myself a lot. And so the reason why I'm telling this story is because, for all the youngsters that are on the street thinking you're gonna get busted and at least you're gonna have your own homeboys take care of you. Nah, man, prison changes people. I heard some other channel say, that they're gonna have the closest one to you hit you. It could be your own blood. They're gonna try to utilize that, and those are facts. So all that, man. The only place you're gonna have loyalty is staying loyal to your loved ones, to those that your homeboys that at one point has actually showed you through love or respect. You know, cause on a personal note, man, I had a lot of homeboys like that. Not a lot, but I had a few that even the day I got busted, they were telling me like, Robertillo, que fool, you just got out, Robertillo, and I took it as, come on, fool. I took it as bad, but it's just the rebel mind we have, to where we can't see the good that presents itself. You know, with this, Cartoon locked it up, Evil locked it up, and a couple days later, a couple camaradas came back with another individual. One was a lifer, but the other one had 2 years to the house. But he got caught with a stabbing, right? A pedazo and DA referral. And at this time, Blythe, it was one of those prisons, that if you were a lifer, they weren't picking up nothing. But if you had a day, they were going to try to break you off. As the camarada eventually caught more time over that. I don't remember exactly how much, but 2 years became at least 10. And this is a story because, amongst Speedies, they play their games. Like at this hole, they were playing that federal faction and state faction, and each staying to their own, not going to war with each other, but it's still, it's something that's supposed to be frowned upon, politic against each other. But they're doing favoritism regardless. They want soldados, and then they go to war, and when everything hits the fences, oops, I don't know what they're talking about, and whose word are they going to take? So just wise up, there ain't nothing in there. All we got from that was some more shoe time, and in reality, more awareness, or at least I should have gotten more awareness of how dirty everything is in prison. I'm talking about Cartoon's closest homeboy that I know of on the yard was Boxer from 18, and they knew each other since kids, and he was ordered by Oso that if Cartoon went back out there to cut his jugular. It's just how the system works. It is why I emphasize on my message that if you have a chance to not go sideways, not backwards, stay good in your neighborhood. You know what I mean? If you have family in prison, stay loyal to them, man. I don't I don't mean to come on here and be like, hey, just walk away or snitch. None of that, man. But if you have a chance to do something for yourself, do something for your jefitos, man. That the day comes that, as myself, you're in a spot solo, and basically it's your doing. You pushed all that away, and I can sincerely say, a lot of people think that just because I stepped away, people don't reach out to me. You guys have a lot to learn, but anyways, like I say before, being in there is a whole bunch of wasted time, and you're gonna suffer, man, because you're thinking one things are one way and they're exactly the complete opposite. So just wise up, just wise up and do what you can to avoid prison or avoid all those lies, that you have to get up in there and earn your stripes. What stripes? Sit in a cell, and when they get fed up with you, you're gonna get dealt with and thrown aside. It's just facts what's gonna happen. I mean, if you guys like to gamble, 1 out of 1,000 makes it his whole career, right? So, but anyways, mi gente, I'm still trying to bounce up from this episode. I'm gonna be putting on stories I had already done for the other channel, and but I'm gonna post them on here. So if you guys see I'm in my story and then another story out of left field is because of that. Also, somebody's blessing me or honoring me with the favor on expanding my message a little better. And she's gonna be coming on here to share a little bit of her story and then her doing with the peeling from San Fernando. The way from growing up as friends, how once he hit that pedestal, how all that went aside, and all of a sudden she became a tool in dispensing. I say it like that, but she will touch on that. She's gonna honor me with coming on here herself. So stay tuned for that. I'm working on keeping my promise on everything I have told you guys. I hope that this story wasn't too out of place, or I'm glorifying anything about this life, man. Cause I'm not. Throughout this whole thing, they don't talk about the things you go through. After we did this, man, it was 3 days of pain. You feel the rubber bullets. They throw you in a management cell with managing your water. You don't have nothing in your cell, just your boxers. So, and for what, man? Just so that, well, you know what? I'm not even gonna say nothing in this case, because when it comes to sex offenders, more with kids, and this guy ruined camaradas, and he was abusive. But it's what you're gonna run into inside. All that you grew up thinking that it ain't good, it becomes good, and you're gonna have to put up and shut up, basically. So avoid all that agony. But again, mi gente, stay tuned real soon for this lady that's gonna honor me, and it'll be something interesting. She's gonna she's gonna bless my message in the hopes that we can reach out to what a lot of people seem to not touch here, which is what does a female friend, a secretaria, one they use and abuse as a mule, go through, the headaches, the struggles. It's always focused on me and camaradas and the causa, but when there's A rotten apple, it hurts all the way around, man. I don't see difference between camaradas, females, familia. At the end of the day, everything becomes a tool for the gang of them. So stay wise, everyone. With this said, please stay true to yourself and loyal to your loved ones. Saludos, bendiciones y muchísimas gracias de nuevo a todos.